So let's start by going into that question, which is understanding what coaching is. And I'd love you to spend maybe 3 or 4 minutes having a chat with your neighbour again, this time looking at the question of what does coaching mean to you? What I found over the years is that the subtlety of understanding that's happened within these groups has got better and better and better. When I first started running them years ago, I think 2009 I did my first equivalent of this. And I remember a chap in the audience saying to me, Nick, coaching is a place when you give back your wisdom to other people. And it wasn't that he was wrong per se. Well, he was wrong per se in terms of semantically, that's not what coaching is. But it wasn't that there was a bad intention behind it. It wasn't like he was being a dictator of wisdom. But it was just that there wasn't a misunderstanding of what coaching was back then. Now, what I've found over the years is that there's a much greater sense of what coaching is, but I still find different energies. Some people think coaching is this, and some people think coaching is that. So I'm curious, what do you think it is? As you walk in this room today, what do you feel coaching is? Have a chat with your neighbour, and I'd like to check in with you and find out from you. I do most of my coaching on Skype and without using the video, so it's just audio. And actually a lot of coaching now is done without any context of environment at all, actually. I mean, I agree that if you're going to do it in an environment, you want it to be the right environment. But it could be that for some people, the right environment is a busy coffee shop where they feel like it's not too intense. So you're dead right, environment's important, but it's about what's appropriate for the client. The reason why I asked about the word safe, by the way, is because it is something that we often say in coaching, it's a safe environment. I agree, but what does being safe mean? It means it's the ability to be unsafe, safely. So there's a lovely, everyone loves a quadrant, don't they? You know, we all have our little quadrant things, and there's one which is, one axis is certainty and uncertainty, and one axis is safety and unsafety. And so where you don't want to be is unsafe uncertainty. And where you don't want to be is safe certainty. Neither of those are conducive for good coaching. Where you ideally want to be is safe uncertainty. But uncertainty doesn't feel comfortable. It feels uncomfortable, and that's why you're there, is to have your world shaken up a little bit. I was recently coaching somebody who initially presented herself as wanting to grow a business. And she said she wanted to grow a business, but she wasn't taking action towards it. So I started to coach her, not on how to get the business, but rather what was going on for her that meant nothing was happening. What was really interesting was that the conversation started to unfold that she wasn't really sharing with her husband what was going on in her life at all. She'd had children with him. They'd agreed that she would stay at home and be a mum, and she was a city worker prior to that. But in the act of doing that, she realised that she didn't want to be a stay-at-home mum. She wanted to go back to the city and become a worker again. But she couldn't face telling her husband. She felt like the husband would, well, A, he wouldn't agree, and B, he would be very unhappy that she was unhappy, but also not willing to change the plan. So she felt very, very stuck. So she thought, right, I'm going to grow a business as a solution to this other issue. And I said to her, I can't, in all good conscience, coach you on doing something which is just a plaster for the real issue here, which is your lack of honest communication with your husband. As a coach, I would be negligent to coach you on what you say you want when I'm seeing something very, very different. That was uncomfortable for her. It didn't feel a good space to be. In fact, when on our third session, I said, how are you arriving here today? And she said, unhappy. And I said, what's the unhappiness around? And she said, recognizing that I'm not in a good place in my life. That was important for her. That was vital for her. And we could have played the game of let's grow your business. It would have been safe, it would have been comfortable, it would have been nice, it would have had scented candles and all this sort of stuff, but would it have made her face the reality of what was going on for her? So I think it needs to be safe in the context of things like non-judgmental, and what were the other phrases that came up? Non-judgmental and confidential, and somebody said something? Trusting. That's what makes it safe. It doesn't make it necessarily comfortable or nice or soft or any of these things. It can be pretty gritty sometimes. In fact, I would say that if, for me as a coach, where I've got to after 18 years, is going, what's the truth that's not being spoken? Like, that's the fundamental question for me, is what's the truth that is not being spoken here, that you and I either are not acknowledging or haven't yet found? And when we find that truth, and when I say truth, I don't mean some universal truth, but the truth for them, when we find that truth, that's when the work really begins. Because otherwise you're playing a game of covering up. You're allowing more and more cotton wool to be built around the truth in order for it not to be felt. No, we want to feel that truth. And that can be really uncomfortable and really saddening and really unhappy, also really motivating, really inspiring, really all sorts of stuff. But that's the kernel of coaching, is let's find what this is. And 3 hours sleep as well. I agree with you, and it's interesting because I think people do reflect, and they reflect a lot. The challenge is we only go so far because we're not seeing what we don't feel or don't notice or can't name. So if you think about like their experience themselves, it's kind of like this. They're reflecting on this part, but here's the real issue. And they don't get past the surface level. So for my client, she thought the reflections were about why am I not starting my business? As in, what don't I know about marketing? What don't I know about sales? Why am I worried about rejection? You're not worried about rejection. You don't really want a business. Like, that's the issue. And it got so clear to me that at one point I said to her, okay, here's the deal. I'm going to take out a contract on your life. I'm going to hire a hitman, and in a month's time, he's going to point a rifle at you and take you out if you haven't made significant progress on your business in a month. What will you do? Guess what she said? Have a little guess. Have a stab at what she said. She said, I'll do my nails. I'll get my nails done. And I said to her, wow. I said, that doesn't sound like I'm going to withdraw the contract killer at this point. Like, I think he's still coming for you. And she said, Nick, I realized I need to be kind to myself first. That's what I need right now. I was like, great. Now we're getting somewhere. You know, so she had been reflecting, but she'd been reflecting on the problem. You know what Einstein said? That the same level of thinking can't fix the problem of the thinking that caused it. Well, the problem that she created for herself was I need a business, and the same level of thinking couldn't see past that to what was really going on for her, which is I'm not having an authentic relationship with my husband. That means I'm facing my life as I really want it to be. So I totally agree with you, and I think the role of the coach is to be a reflective mirror that goes much deeper than they realize even exists for them. That's the real thing. And by the way, I also say this, is that as a coach, we're not simply asking questions, because otherwise you're only tapping into that bit. Like, if you're asking questions, they can only know so much as they know. What we're really doing is we're noticing, and we're going deeper, and we're reflecting, and we're feeling, and we're bringing our own feelings and our own confusions into the space and saying, this doesn't make sense to me. Like, what is this for me as well as what is it for you? That's when you start to really feel the coaching at its best. When there's two people almost wrestling with something that's unknown. Make sense? Like, you're wrestling with the unknown quality that exists in the room. Because if they know it, they'll do it. You know, if they want to go and buy a box of tea bags from a shop, they don't need coaching around that because they know how to do it. It's what they don't know that's causing the real issue. We went on a retreat this year as a team, and what we realized, and what's the phrase we use, Iveta? We want to be the leading, what kind of school of coaching?
Transformational.
Humanistic. So we want to be, and I asked you, Iveta, because you know, remember the word humanistic. But we're a humanistic coach at school. What that means is you're dead right. There are different kinds of coaching. You know, if you're a tennis coach, you're a very different kind of coach from what we're talking about today. So it's worth saying that what we're talking about today, and what we mean generally when we talk about the coaching profession, is humanistic coaching, which is different from mentor-style coaching or skill-style coaching or sports-style coaching. We're talking about humanistic, which is what is it to be you in this space of life, rather than how is it to hit that ball, for instance. I think that as a coach, we find our own way through everything. And so some coaches will find the wheel of life useful. I don't. It's not something I use. I don't use any models. Somebody earlier said about toolkit. I don't have a toolkit other than myself and my ability to listen keenly to somebody and to really reflect on what's happening for me and what's happening for them, and to have a genuine, authentic dialogue. Like, that for me is coaching. But you could use the wheel of life. You could use tools. You could use models. All of these things are okay, depending on who you are as a coach. What we'll take a look at in a second is what are the underlying principles that means that you could be a wheel of life coach, or you could be not a wheel of life coach, and you'll still be a coach. Because under both of those are a set of principles that we're both agreeing on. Make sense? So for me, do I work with all issues of life? Absolutely. Do I then break it down into wheel of life? No, never. Not because it's a bad tool, it just isn't my style, that's all.